Thanks. I think the only thing more intimidating than having to give a TEDx talk is following the robot guy. I don't know I can possibly follow that up, but I'm going to try. So I watched a lot of TEDx talks in preparation for this one, and if there's one thing that I saw that was pretty consistent, it's that you have to start off with a really provocative statement. So mine is that I work in social media, which you wouldn't think would be extremely provocative, but after I got an art degree, which scared my parents enough, and I told them I was going to work in social media, they were pretty terrified because they didn't know what that was 5 years ago. Now a lot of people hear about social media, but I think they think I tweet and I Facebook all day, or I sit on YouTube and watch cat videos, but it really couldn't be further from the truth. So kind of like they said in the introduction, I do a lot of studying about human behavior online. I consider myself more of a digital anthropologist, so I look at societal trends and cultural trends through the lens of social media and digital. And through this, I've learned a lot of things that I'm completely sure of. There are also a lot of things that I have no idea about, and there are lots of questions in this space. So I'll start off with some things I'm really sure about. And the first one is that you cannot manufacture authenticity. I think when a lot of people join social media, either for themselves or as brands or companies, they think that they're going to go on and make these great authentic relationships, and sometimes it just doesn't always work out that way. So brands will come on and try and get involved in a conversation that's happening on Twitter, or in this case, Foursquare. During Hurricane Sandy, Gap tweeted out, "Hey, you should all come shop on Gap.com," and it's just like, didn't translate at all. Sometimes empathy just cannot be recreated on Twitter. And even though there is a human behind the computer, we have to consider, how things come through. So even if you're trying to have an authentic conversation, like one of my banks, Mass Mutual, I had friended them on Facebook. They started asking me my feelings about baseball. Great, I love baseball. I just don't know that I want to talk about it with my bank. So all of these things just kind of get lost in this really uncomfortable place between the digital social world and our real world. So as much as we're trying to have these conversations, and social media gets compared to a cocktail party a lot, can you imagine going to a cocktail party and talking to someone and telling them about a problem you're having and having them respond with, "Actually, you need to call this customer service number to handle that problem, and I'll talk to you later." It just doesn't actually always work out like that. But on the bright side, there are some things I've learned that are really great. So one of them is that there's a community for everyone. I was doing research for a department store, and I was looking on YouTube to see if people had posted videos about the department store and had said anything interesting, or maybe there was a flash mob, who knows. And I found this video that has 78,000 views on it of their elevator. And so I was confused, and I looked into it a little bit more. And apparently there's a huge community on YouTube of people who are elevator enthusiasts, and they go all over the country to find old hydraulic elevators, and they comment on them, and they share them, and they're just so excited about this thing that is seemingly so niche. And you have to wonder, 10 years ago, if you were an elevator enthusiast, how your peer group would feel about that. And now, because of social media, you can have an entire community of people who get just as excited as you, 78,000 people who are just as excited about the elevators. I was also working with an aerospace client, and people aren't so ready to go on Facebook and Twitter and say, "Oh, I really love Boeing," or "Oh, I really love Raytheon." They're just not those lifestyle brands that we should be so lucky to work with all the time. But there actually was this community we uncovered of people called plane spotters. So on Flickr, this is just one of the many communities that I found of 2,600 people who are sharing photos of planes leaving and arriving at airports and being really psyched about the different mechanics of them and seeing rare planes and sharing in this experience as a community. And on a more pop culture level, this site has gotten a lot of press recently because they were speaking at an event, but Rap Genius is one of my favorite sites, and I think before we used to be driving along, listening to a song, interpreting the lyrics to ourselves, and now we can go to a website where we collaborate on our interpretations of rap lyrics and kind of crowdsource them. And it's just these, single isolated events that we used to have are now enhanced so much through the social web as a tool. And because of this, amazing things start to happen when people come together in these shared experiences. So if you can imagine how many jobs people have gotten through social media, how many relationships have been started through social media. I mean, this is just one case out of so many where this person saw a girl, they thought she was attractive, they went to Craigslist and posted a misconnection, because that's what we do now, is we just go on Craigslist when we see an attractive person. And they've now had an almost 2-year relationship and are asking and answering questions about it on Reddit. And so can you imagine not having met the love of your life if it weren't for the internet, or not having that great career? In my case, I'd have no career right now. So if you hadn't had that opportunity because of the internet, it's actually pretty amazing when you take a step back and you think about it. I went to a conference recently and I heard a speaker who is a real estate developer in Colombia, and he talked about how inspired he was by Kickstarter. And he identified a problem in Colombia, which was that there wasn't a lot of affordable housing for younger professionals, especially people working in like the tech space. There just wasn't anything that was fitting for them, and many people were commuting to these jobs where they worked really long hours, and it just wasn't working. And so he had the idea to build a crowdfunding campaign for an actual skyscraper. And over 3,000 Colombians contributed and are now going to be living in this skyscraper that's being built as a live workspace. So it's just incredible that this one problem can bring so many people together and solve so many things. And most recently, I don't think there's anyone in the room who probably wasn't personally touched by the marathon bombings, but the outpouring of support once social media enabled us to share stories of individuals and how their families were affected brought people together in ways that this crowdfunding world has never even seen. This campaign in particular is actually for someone I know who got over $300,000 in a day once their story was shared by people who wanted to help fund, their well-being and their health. Most of these people, complete strangers who were just touched and wanted to, help them get the help that they need in this situation. And even in tragedy, people just coming together to do amazing things. That being said, it's not all just butterflies and rainbows in social media. These are the things I know for sure, but there are also a lot of things that are still unclear. And so one of them, especially having this advertising lens that I currently work through, is I'm learning that consumer culture is really just culture. And so this should look pretty familiar, albeit a little bit grainy. When you go on Facebook to see what's up with your friends or consume content or get entertainment, all of a sudden, you're also getting content and entertainment from brands that are trying to sell you things. And it becomes very blurry, because it's like, I appreciate that these advertisements are targeted to me. It's a much better experience, because if we can all agree that advertising is going to be there no matter what, I'd rather it be something that's relevant. But at the same time, if I'm on Twitter tweeting about yoga, I don't know that I want my favorite yoga brand to be asking me about yoga dates I have planned for the future, because we start to wonder about that authenticity thing we talked about earlier. Are they really trying to be my friend? Is there someone on the other side of this computer who's like, really caring about my yoga, or are they actually just wanting me to buy more yoga pants? And on that same note, social media has also made us the advertisements. So again, I was looking up videos for this department store, and this was another one I found. No flash mobs, but I did find this video too, and this is Juicy Star, who's YouTube famous. She's a teenager, and she posted a video giving a tour of her room, and you'll see it has 3.6 million views on it, of her going around and saying, this is where I bought this chair, and this is why I picked this colored duvet for my bed, and kind of giving her fans a glimpse into her life. But at the same time, brands are now sharing that video like as if it's a free advertisement by this teen who is making something for entertainment. And again, these worlds that are digital and real life are now all muddied together. So I end up having a lot more questions rather than things I can come up here and share that I know for sure. And so the first one is, when is it appropriate to regulate the free and open internet? A lot of people in my industry have been talking about things like CISPA and PIPA and laws that threaten our free speech online, things that they're equating to the Patriot Act of the internet. But at the same time, I think it's important to have a dialogue. If we're going to regulate the internet, when is it appropriate? And I don't think that those things are easily defined yet. Another question I have is, what does the future look like when everything happens in real time? So in disaster responses, people are posting and tweeting and sharing the first thing that comes to their mind. Breaking news organizations are sharing things that they're hearing on police scanners that might not even be true. And so you have to wonder about the implications of this long term, because if you've seen The Social Network, you'll know they say the internet is written in ink. It's not erasable. So how do we begin to change our behavior if this is the norm? And what is the cost of transparency? So when you go online and you're saying, I want to be authentic and I want to be transparent, either as an individual or as a brand, if I have this opportunity to share my story, what does it mean if I'm being completely transparent? What does it mean for a teen who's sharing a photo that they think is private and is now on the internet forever? And how can we begin to educate the youth in particular on the cost of these things long term? And so I've been thinking a lot about the first speaker we heard today about listening. And I think the answer for many people is to not engage. It's turn off your cell phones. There's kind of this anti-digital movement happening now where people are saying, let's put our phones away before dinner and let's not engage on Facebook, or I'm going to delete my Facebook altogether. And I don't think that that's the answer. I think it's that we have to listen, like we heard earlier, and listen during engagement, and just be aware of how we're participating and contributing to these bigger conversations. Because if we can all agree that this internet is an amazing tool that can bring people together in sadness and can help change people's lives, even on such a small level, we understand that there's great power, but that there's also great responsibility. So I ask that when you leave, either into the break or just into your real life after this, when you begin to participate in the digital life that are now becoming one thing, that you start to define these rules for yourself. Because each community has some self-governing aspect to it, and behavior that's prescribed to it, like crediting sources, my Stan Lee quote. I had to look that one up, but I got it. So crediting your sources online, we all have these sort of rules, but at the same time, the internet is so big. There are so many communities that we can only begin to define how we are choosing to engage and how those younger than us that we have responsibilities over are choosing to engage as well. So of course, as I talk about listening during engagement, I'll ask you to think about what has social media taught you about people, a very specific question. And of course, share your thoughts on Twitter. We'd really love to hear them. But more importantly, listen to the thoughts of those in the room around you and begin to define these rules for yourself. Thank you so much.